Hey, LaRue Spites, Ryan Hankins. Hope you all are doing well tonight. Dropping in for Wednesday sessions, or maybe we should call it Wednesday conversations. We've had guests the last couple of weeks. We'll spend a little bit of time sharing tonight, and then later I'll take a look at the prayer list. Things continue at the church, as you might imagine. Offices are closed. Ministers and staff are working from home and are glad to reach out and hear from church members as we've been able to, and glad to hear updates about what's happening in your lives. We know that things are very different for all of us in these circumstances, and last week we talked some about how the different things we were doing, and this week I thought we'd consider the different things we're thinking. And one that I mentioned to LaRue and Ryan just moments ago is I've had a number of conversations with folks in the way we think about the church these days, and things we've kind of realized in this new reality. Sometimes we think about church in the past as we say church, and we think about Sunday morning at 10 a.m. and worship or Sunday school, and now we're kind of seeing and thinking about the church differently, and it's revealed some of the dynamic nature of the church and its members out engaged in many different ways, praying for each other, checking on each other. Perhaps also it's revealed some frailty in the church that we might have not thought about otherwise. But this is just one example of many, I think, of just the way that now, as in the midst of the COVID-19, that there are thoughts that we perhaps hadn't had in the past that in the last 6 weeks have been become part of our life. So LaRue, I was going to check in with you all and see kind of what you've been thinking lately, maybe thoughts that weren't a part of life 6 months or 6 years ago that have crossed your mind lately.
Well, I think the most obvious thing that all of us are feeling is that the church is definitely not a building. I mean, that I've heard again and again and again. I love our building. I love going there to worship. I've had some of the most worshipful times of my life at Vestavia Hills Baptist Church. But I must say that the worship services have been so wonderful online. I think maybe I've had some of the best worship times of my life just by myself. And for those of you who do not know, I am truly by myself. I am in this condo. I am the only human in here. And this is starting 7 weeks, okay? One little story, and then Ryan, I'll shut up. But this is so true. I recall once that Major and I took a widow home after the funeral of her husband. She had no children. And we took her home, and I recall going in the house with her, and Major said to her, "Miss Lula, are you afraid to stay here? Would you like for LaRue to stay here? I know that this is going to be different being alone." And she said, "Now, preacher, you know I have never been alone. The Lord is with me." And I have chuckled many times in these days because she was right. The Lord is with us wherever we are. The kingdom of God is truly among us.
Yeah, that's so true. There's and a moment like this brings that more to mind, I guess, right? It kind of recalls such a circumstance.
There.
You know, those kinds of things have come up in my conversations with church members in recent weeks, and their different experiences with church. You know, a lot of our people are, our congregation is known in part because of its sense of connection with one another. It's warmth, you know, and there was a lot of anxiety in early conversations about what's this going to mean for us. We're not seeing each other. We're not meant to be separated like this. But one of the really cool things, I believe, at least that we've identified, is how much meaning folks have found in their efforts to be the church separate from each other, or at least physically apart, right? So trying to connect through small group conversations, Bible studies, those kind of things. Ryan is one of the teachers.
Right.
He teaches in one of our classes, as you do, LaRue, and you've kind of encountered that. How do you keep that small group connecting?
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, generally, not necessarily on that, but what kind of thoughts have been on your mind in recent days?
I've been thinking a lot about sort of fragility and resiliency that goes along with the church conversation, but just in a broader sense, how things that seem so stable and steady can begin to change so rapidly and so suddenly. I think about my grandfather, who was a barber, and he joked how that was a recession-proof job. And it may well be, but I never thought we'd see a day where you couldn't get your hair cut, and how quickly that has come. And yet the resiliency of how adaptable schools or churches, you all on the staff have been, and our Sunday school classes and other groups have been creative in finding creative ways to continue really critical relationships and functions and basic government services and finding resiliency in this time. That's been something I've thought a lot about, and it's encouraging to me.
Yeah. Nancy and I, she was by the office today, and we had in the fellowship hall set up like 3 normal Wednesday night tables. So we're like 15 feet away from each other. And I said, Nancy, you want to have lunch, 15 feet away today? And she sat on another table at a distance. And one of the things we were talking about was, and I think this is the conversation that almost everyone has had, that is so few of us. I mean, there were a handful, but for the rest of us, this reality really didn't cross our minds. For most of us, we didn't really think, at least Nancy and I were saying, well, we never imagined this kind of scenario playing out in our ministry, in the life of the church. And it's surreal to be in the middle of it. And I think that's true for all of us, thinking, boy, a year ago, I may have thought, well, maybe someday there'll be a pandemic or some circumstance. But living in it, we realize, wow, this is so different than I imagined. And we're doing things that we haven't done, or doing things different in ways we haven't done them before, and thinking things that we really, maybe not that we haven't thought them before, but in very different ways, thinking about things that hadn't crossed our mind previously.
I don't think we're often in a situation where there is really no obvious good or better path. We have decisions to make, and there are decisions that they're different, but they're all good options, or one seems to have a little more wisdom or rationale behind it. But in so much right now, it seems to be that there's really we have very few knowns.
Yeah.
It's hard to think about how do you make a decision on anything when everything is a variable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
LaRue, I'm wondering, as we, as Christ followers, as believers who hold to prayer, and we talked about how circumstances like this have led to different actions and different thoughts. Have you thought any about how this circumstance impacts prayer life? How we're praying these days?
Very, very much. I've discovered some things about myself. And first of all, the thing I've discovered is that I've gotten my identity from doing. I'm one of these, I make a list, and I have a list every day, and I'm going to accomplish that list. Well, guess what? My list is gone. I don't have my list. And I've been so grateful for, there was a book that Fisher and Caroline Humphreys gave me right before this started, just a suggestion that I might find it meaningful, and it's called Disciplines of the Inner Life. And it is wonderful, and it's done sections. I'm on my 7th session now, And this one is entitled, this week is Making Moments. And there was a whole week on solitude, and there was, you know, a week on desire. And it's just made me think about how much I spun my wheels and did. And I left off a very important part of my life. And I have discovered the joy and true comfort of spending unhurried time in the Word. Now, I'm well aware that Ryan and many others have children at home, and life is hectic. I'm here, and sometimes I wish I had a child that would come in and liven this place up. But I have had lots of time, and I have spent much time, and I've discovered that the sweetest joy is praying for my church family, specific needs. And I'm always looking for things to pray about. And that's what I want to hear. What can I pray about for you? Now, I do want to go over and hug Jerry Pittman's neck, and I want to go hug Rosemary Bamberg's neck, and I wanted to spend time with Fisher and Caroline. The hardest thing is not being able to be with people who are hurting, and you can't comfort them.
That is very true.
I just rambled all over the place.
No, that's perfect, LaRue. That's very much kind of what's on our hearts and minds right now is what we can do when there's a long list of things we can't do. It's good to be reminded of the ways the church can still be the church. And
what we can do, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I sure appreciate y'all taking some time and dropping in tonight. And I look forward to when we can be in the same place together. Obviously, that's one of the unknowns that remains for us, right? Is what this looks like in coming weeks and when the church will be able to make its way back together. And you can know that, we're thinking and preparing for that, but there's still quite a lot of unknowns. I am grateful as one who, as a member of this church, that the nature of Vestavia Hills Baptist is one where I don't feel this distance is threatening us. It's a hardship. It's beyond inconvenient. But I've seen the resiliency of our church and of our people's faith, even and sometimes, like Ryan was saying, it's the fragility that reveals that resiliency. So thank y'all so much for being here tonight. And again, I hope to see you face to face soon.
Well, we love our staff, don't we, Ryan?
Indeed.
We love our staff. Yes, indeed.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mike. It's good to see you both.
You too. Good night.
Okay.
Friends, I'm going to take a minute and look at the prayer list before we go. And you heard LaRue mention a few. Rosemary Bamberg is still in the hospital, and we want to remember her and Dave in these days. And of course, the Pittman family are with Jerry in these days as well. And our thoughts are with Pris and the children and grandchildren and all those around Jerry. Also, the Poe family, you perhaps saw that Dr. Poe passed recently, and memorial service was this week. And we want to remember Jody and that extended family. So if you would, and we know there are many others unnamed, so many folks who remain close in service in situations that put them at risk, and we want to remember those, our healthcare professionals in this time, and all those in leadership who are striving to do the right thing and make good decisions. We do love to know about the needs of our church, kind of as LaRue was saying. So if there are things that have come up in your life, please make a note, let the church know. We can add those to the prayer list. If you would, let's pause for a minute and pray together. God, we're grateful to be your church, and we're mindful now of these names that have been mentioned and the so many more that go unnamed. Your people around the globe are in great need of you always, but today we pray that we'd all know your presence and that it would be comfort to us and strength. We pray also that you bless your church and let us be hand.
My first Well, I have a special guest for me here, and since I'm hosting, I get to have who I want to, and this is one of my three children, Katie. Katie lives in New York City and has been a school teacher there for
12 years.
12 years. I just can't believe it. So at any rate, she is still teaching online, and I have had a lot of people ask about how she is doing and all of that because she is in New York City, which is the epicenter of this thing. And so I thought I would put her on here tonight. So first of all, so that people wouldn't have to ask me anymore, they could see for themselves how wonderful Katie looks. So, Hun, tell the church whatever you want to say to them.
Well, thank you for asking me. Vestavia Hills Baptist is still a home for me, and I appreciate a lot of people have reached out, and I know that that you guys asked Mom and Dad, so I really appreciate that and appreciate your prayers.
Thanks. Now, it has been pretty chaotic in New York City, and we've watched all of this from here, and of course we've got it too, but it's unique because of the city and the way it is. And what's it been like emotionally to live there?
It's been strange because I read the same news that you do, and I'm on my 7th week inside, so
Wow.
it almost doesn't feel real because I just have been in my neighborhood. But I feel great grief, and we have at least one kid in every class in our school that's affected directly in some way, with a parent or a grandparent or their parent are on the front lines or still working. So I think that being a teacher is great in the way that I have to be able to model kind of flexibility and resilience for kids. So I just have to do it. So in that way, my job is a great blessing and has kept me very busy. And I've been learning a lot in that way. But it's strange. I live about 10 blocks away from Mount Sinai Hospital, which is one of the largest hospital systems, and walked by the other day, and they have tents out in the park in Central Park where overflow of people affected by COVID are. So it's weird and sad, but also, restaurants in our neighborhood are feeding front lines. Every day at 7, people stand outside and cheer and honk horns in appreciation for people working in hospitals. So there's different ways. People always say that New York is so big and overwhelming, but there's ways that people are looking out and caring for each other. That's really beautiful to see.
Yeah, it really is. And and teaching online has been a challenge. I know we have lots of teachers in the church and they're struggling with the same thing, plus parents who are trying to teach from home
Right.
too. So,
yeah, it's overwhelming.
Have you seen that little video of the music teacher who plays your ukulele and then screams at the end to express how she feels?
I really felt that. Yeah, I felt that.
So where do you get away from it?
Luckily, I don't know if you can see, but I actually have a little terrace. So and that looks out into a courtyard that's pretty quiet. So I spend time outside.
Good.
I go on walks, but you have to wear a mask, and it's not super enjoyable right now. So, but just getting air is good, and unplugging has been good. I usually try to set my phone down at night and not get back on it because it feels like when you work from home, you're just working all the time. So there's always something to be done.
We love you, and I'm not going to keep you a long time because you got to get back to teaching. But I just wanted to have a chance for the church to see you and you to see the church. And well, you can't see them, but anyway,
I can imagine her.
Imagine them. Anyway, your mom and dad love you so much, and we're excited because we know the time is coming when you'll get to come to Alabama, even if your daddy's got to drive up through New York City and pick you up.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate your prayers. Thank you so much.
Love you much, hon. Have a good day, okay?
You too. Love you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.